Welcome to WikiAfrica Hour, where Africa's Wikimedians talk to, learn from, and discuss with each other topics they choose. Each session is curated by African Wikimedians to expand Africa's open movement. Today's host is Ceslas Obanyaya.
Hello viewers, I welcome you to another awesome episode of WikiAfrica Hour, titled Wikimedia Foundation Board Demystified, which is the third episode. I'm Ceslas Obanyaya, your host, and in this episode, we'll be discussing the upcoming Wikimedia Foundation Board member elections with the aim of demystifying the Wikimedia Foundation Board. The upcoming Wikimedia Foundation Board elections has once again created the possibility for a candidate from Africa to sit on the board. As an African is yet to be on the Wikimedia Foundation Board, the upcoming elections have once again raised very interesting conversations across the various Wikimedia communities. And the onus falls on us, the Wiki in Africa team, to bring on this month's WikiAfrica Hour podcast interesting guests and people who can amplify the conversation for us. Of course, with the aim of giving more clarity to the upcoming Wikimedia Foundation Board elections. This action reiterates the aim for which Wiki in Africa activated the WikiAfrica Hour podcast, which is to share current updates and highlights of Africa Wikimedian activities, interact with guests, if any, and take questions from community members, and also to promote synergy within the Wiki community by discussing topics, projects, constraints, collaborations, and opportunities. This is why we've invited the following guest speakers to this episode. There's Florence Devouard, Maria Sefidari, Dominique, Eliane, who unfortunately couldn't join us today. There is Mahuton, Posupe, there is Zita, there is Douglas Scott, and there is Mohamed Bachounda. I'm pleased to welcome the first three guests who actually would be the first panel for this interview in the persons of Mahuton, Posupe, Zita, Zage, and Mohamed Bachounda. Wikimedia Foundation has contracted some people to facilitate the WMF Board elections. We have invited three people from the facilitations team to shine light on the election process during this session. We have Mahuton Bienvenue Posupe, who is the person in charge of facilitation for French language. Mahuton is from Benin Republic. He is a member of Wikimedia du Benin user group. He started editing Wikipedia in 2015, and he does some works on Media Wiki as a volunteer. And he's also a developer under the Media Wiki. Zita herself is in charge of facilitation for Sub-Saharan African region. Zita is from Ghana. She has made several contributions, mostly on English Wikipedia and Wikidata. She also serves as the Anglophone Regional Ambassador for Art and Feminism Group. There is Mohamed Bachounda, who is the person in charge of facilitation for French language and the Middle East and North African region. Bachounda is from Algeria. He is the co-founder of Wikimedia Algeria, which is his user group, and also a project lead of WikiMassacre. Please make welcome these guests as they take on our questions. So, Mahuton, we would go with you first. Could you please give us the context of the job of the facilitation team and the details of this year's call for election? Mahuton, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Ceslas, and really happy for being with you today. And we're happy that the facilitation team is also here. Yes, our job started in January this year, and our roadmap is simple, is to make sure our communities, African communities, European communities, and communities from other regions of the world are included in the process of the board election. Not only the board election, but also on the board governance. What we notice is that most communities doesn't know exactly what is the board, what they do, who are they, and mostly African communities don't know exactly if a board really exists. So we started with a call for feedback to have conversations with many communities, and mostly particularly with African communities, about how we can ensure diversity and skills in the board. So this year's elections, we want to ensure that African voices can be heard in this process.
Okay. Thank you so much for that brief insight. I think I could almost agree when you said some Africans were not sure if the board actually exists. And then going to your second question, I don't know, what's the atmosphere like in your immediate Wiki community concerning the upcoming board elections?
Good question, Cicero. When we started, it's like everything is new for our co-communities. Exactly, as I said, they say, oh, okay, you want to talk about the board, but we don't know the birds. Who are they? What they do? And after a month of conversations, it's like now we create a kind of awareness about the board. People are getting more involved in the governance of the board, of the Wikimedia board. And currently, the atmosphere is that, okay, if people are enthusiastic to join more conversations about the board governance. And yeah, we are happy because we are getting there about what are the objectives. We still have a lot of road to do because there still have many communities that are left aside because maybe because of many barriers, like language barrier, for example, and we need to do the most to have them in.
Okay, the language barrier point is actually very, very valid. And for you, who is in charge of facilitation for French language, what's the most challenging part of your engagement?
Challenge is first to, you know, my scope is Africa, is also Europe and North America, because I cover French-speaking regions, what is called the Francophone regions. And I said earlier now that we have a lot of problems regarding language barrier. My region, we speak French, and when you look at our movement, most of the conversations happens in English, and many people in our communities cannot really bring the thought, can really bring the expression what they think on the table, because there is that language barrier. And our biggest challenge, I want to say, is to create more regional conversations and to ensure that people have the information, and then creating a report and making accessible for all the community, you know. And I do think that one thing we are also doing is providing interpretation and also translation for our community during Wikimedia events, you know. And that is most challenging now. And a part of that, I think we also need to ensure that for this election, we want to have African community really engaged. First, we need to have more candidates from Africa. We also want to have more voters from Africa. And that is our challenge now.
Thank you so much, Mahuton, for throwing light to these challenges. I mean, who would have thought there were these things going on at your end in terms of doing your job as a facilitator? Thank you so much. Now we'll move on to Zita. Hello, Zita.
Hi, Cecilot. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So you've been working as a board election facilitator since. I mean, how does it feel so far?
Well, it has been awesome. And at this time, I feel a bit tensed because I want everything to go as planned. And considering the goal that we want to attain, which is to get a lot of diverse participation in terms of candidates and voters, not only from Africa, but from across the various regions in our movement. And so far, looking at the way things are going, I'm confident that we will achieve our goals.
That's really objective. I mean, achieving your goals in the end, that would actually mean a job well done. Moving to the second question for you. After the call for candidates, could you please give us the context of what follows next in the next stage?
Well, for the next stage, candidates will have to be confirmed. And once the confirmed candidates have been announced, voting begins. Hopefully, we are waiting for the candidates to be confirmed so that we can now open voting system for all Wikimedians to start voting.
Okay, is it possible to get a bit more insight in the confirmation process?
Sorry, could you come again?
I was asking if maybe you could give us maybe a bit breakdown of what the confirmation process entails.
I think the election committee would have to take care of. I can't give you the details of that.
That's all right. That's all right. Thanks for the one you've given us. And as the WMF Board election facilitator for Sub-Saharan Africa region, which is a very big region, what is the ambience, I mean, that you've actually perceived over time as you're holding these discussions in this region?
Thank you for asking that question. For me, I think the ambience so far has been peaceful and a friendly one. And comedians for that because I like the way we argue as a community, and there has been ongoing debate on various topics concerning the board elections. And as I speak to you at this point, there's interesting conversation going on in the Telegram group about whether considering the edit count of candidates is a good way to assess whether the candidate has a good knowledge of the movement. Some people are of the view that the edit count can be flawed, so we should not really make that a big priority in assessing board candidates. And others are also of the view that this is a grounding that all board candidates should have, because it's going to influence any decisions that they take when it comes to prioritization and strategizing. So yeah, it's been peaceful and it's been really, really interesting. And I do hope that more Africans will get involved in these discussions on the Telegram group page.
Okay, thank you for letting us know how constructive the conversations have been going. It's awesome to know that more and more Africans are actually getting involved in discussing community-related issues. Thank you so much, Zita, for your time. Let's move to Bachounda. Hello, Bachounda.
Hello, Cesar. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. During the course of my research around what you people do in the facilitation team, I came across something. It says there are 3 new community and affiliate selected seats and 3 new board selected seats added to the Wikimedia Foundation board. I would like to know these new seats, what necessitated the creation of these new seats? That's the first question. And then what are the plans to fill these seats, as I understand that some of these seats will be filled in 2022?
Yeah. If we compare the community at the beginning and today, there is a big difference. The foundation has created a team especially for this scale. It was a call for during 6 weeks from February to 14 March. During this 6 week, the KEL raised near 900 participants to clean the 99 regional and global conversation. The result is very interesting. And while the Wikimedia Foundation and the movement have grown about 5 times in the past 10 years, during these past 10 years, the board structure and process need to be changed. The number of designed today, we have a problem of capacity, we have a problem of performance, we have a problem of lack of representation of movement especially in the diversity and in different gap. This problem was identified during 2019 and also especially addressed with the recommendation of the strategy 2030. This strategy asks the foundation to change to search a new perspective. For this reason, the only solved the problem of the board agreed to increase size to a maximum of 16 seats. It was 10, and the increasing is to more 6 seats from the 10. What is missing? It's a process to promote a community candidate that represent the diversity of our movement. It's important to have a diverse member inside the board. It's of this complex global organization. The foundation, we know to agree the foundation is a special. It's a unique case around the world. If we compare it with a different organization in the global. To be okay with the movement strategy recommended, it's urgent to increase the diversity, etc., and to promote the perspective from other regions and underrepresented community. That's all. That's the reason of the increasing of number of seats.
Okay, thank you so much. And can you let us know the exact number of seats that are being filled this year?
4.
Okay,
From
4 are
10
getting filled this
and
year.
2 in the next year.
Okay, 2 will be filled next year.
Yes.
Is this to say there will be another election next year?
Another election, I think the next 2 seat is reserved to affiliate, I think.
Okay, so it's probably by appointment. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Not appointment, no.
Okay.
Yeah. But now
Okay.
it's for the election is reserved
4 for this year, 2 for
yeah.
next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification. Thank you so much, Bachounda. We have another question for you. And currently, there seems to be overwhelming pressure for a candidate from Africa to get on the Wikimedia Foundation board. I mean, why do you think this is happening? Why do you think there is this overwhelming pressure currently?
We need to know. First, thank you for this question. But and we need to know that Africa from the north. This continent represents, for me, the future of the humanity. The the population of this continent are among all this population among is youngest in the world. The population growth increasingly large. For example, only for Nigeria, it will double of its population around 2050. That's only 30 years from now. Less than 30. All the developed country in the north exploit this continent because it has a gigantic resources, from human resources, from all resources is in Africa, not exploited. On the other hand, many poor countries are in this continent. When we say poor country in the economy, in industry, in culture, in knowledge, the most visible inequality are in this African continent. We all think that we must allow to this continent to progress. They are capable to doing it alone, but just we need to leave the way open for all emergence ability, for all a brilliant capability of these people from Africa. We need to help them to change this. The foundation has started, I see as volunteer, great ambitious program among to them. And knowledge is, for me, is a pillar of the sustainable development, and a clear and can give us a clear vision in the sense emanating from a member from this region that can improve the situation. For this, all Africans are feeling all this pressure from them, and that's all.
Okay, thank you so much for these valid points that you've made in trying to answer the question, Bachounda. The last question I would have for you is, I mean, you are from Africa, not Africa precisely. What is the most inspiring part of your engagement as
Yeah.
the facilitator for Middle East and North Africa? It's like you're merging a bit of Africa and then adding it to Middle East. I mean, what's the most inspiring part of what you do in this engagement?
Because I'm from Algeria, I'm in a special geopolitic position. Algeria is a part of Africa. Algeria is part of Mediterranean, is part of North and Middle East and Maghreb Arab. Is a part of Francophonie. All Algerians speak French fluently. All this is a mixture and very complex for me to when we facilitate between French community and Arabic community, also and African community. For me, this opportunity to work with the foundation, maybe I'm a first Algerian to offer my service to Wikimedia Foundation as a I learned a lot of, and all my hope is to give a great plus to during my job to the community, and also I'm continuing to working. It's not easy to be a volunteer and to be a contractor with the foundation. It's not easy. It's not easy to, but I manage it. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much. I can understand it's quite a handful in terms of being tasking, but good to know that being involved in these respective affiliations, Algeria has its one region or the other. can inspire you to keep on going and keep on doing what you do. Thank you so much for your time, Bachounda.
Welcome.
That's the last question that you just answered. Thank you, Mahuton. Thank you, Zita, for your input. The audience will be able to ask you questions at the end of the panels. Here is now our second round panel. We are pleased to welcome two former chairwomen of the Wikimedia Foundation Board, as their experience and insights can put things in perspective on today's topic. There is Florence Devouard, who was the chairwoman of the Wikimedia Board from October 2006 until July of 2008. She served as one of the elected representatives to the board starting June 2004. She also co-founded Wikimedia Funds and was vice chair of Wikimedia Funds for a while. She is currently project co-lead in the WikiAfrica movement through Wiki in Africa. You're welcome, Florence. And there is Maria Sefidari, who was a founding member and the first vice chair of Wikimedia España. She became a member of the Wikimedia Foundation Board of Trustees in August 2013 after a community election. She was elected vice chair of the Wikimedia Foundation Board in June 2016 and then re-elected in May 2017. In July 2018, she was elected the board chair of the Wikimedia Foundation Board of Trustees. And on August 15th, 2019, she was re-elected the chair, a position she held until June 3rd, 2001. Florence, Maria, you are both welcome to this session.
Thank you.
We'll be starting our questions with you, Florence. Can you tell us more about the Wikimedia Foundation and what the role of the Board of Trustees really entails?
Okay. Let me first state something. First thing, Maria and me were both chairwomen. We were not the only women on the board, and we were not the only women as chair. So let's put it very boldly. Women can be elected on the board of Wikimedia Foundation. That we can do it. African is a different story, but women can do it. So let's celebrate the fact that women power is working in this big organization. Otherwise, the Wikimedia Foundation. So just a very short memory. This is the non-profit, US-based non-profit that actually hosts Wikipedia and Wikimedia project. It doesn't own the project, but it is obviously an essential part in making it operate. And Maria will probably be able to tell a lot about how it currently works. From my perspective, I go back to the past. When the Wikimedia Foundation was created, that was back in 2003. There were 3 self-appointed people on the board at that time. And then the first election occurred back in 2004. This is when I was first elected. And I was there for 4 years, 3 years elected and 1 year appointed. So the entire organization is being overseen by a board of trustees. This board of trustees have been of different number of people over time. It was 3 people back in 2003. It is currently, I'm not even sure how many, maybe 8 or 9 or 10. Maria should know, maybe say. And it can be up to 16 people. And these people do not run the organization. They are not the executive direction of it. They oversee the work being done by the staff, and they oversee the way, the direction that is being followed by the organization. So that's a very important element and a big difference from the first few years of operation of the organization. And there was some discussion, previously about how many members they are. So this number is fluctuating, but it is important to note that there are 3 different types of members at the moment. There is 1 seat that is reserved for Jimmy Wales, the co-founder of Wikipedia. And there's a collection of seats who are appointed directly by the board. And most of the time, these people are appointed due to their expertise. So they're not always Wikipedians. this was meant in particular to make sure that there would be people with expertise on legal issues, financial issues, partnership issues, which cannot always be elected by community members. So there's a bunch of appointed people, and most of the time we do not really hear much about them. We do not really know them much. They are not very talkative, so it's a little bit of a mystery sometimes for us community members. And then there's the second half of the board, which is somehow sourced from the community. And in the past, some of them have been chosen by direct election from the community, and in other years, some of them have been chosen, proposed by through an affiliate election process. Right now, it seems we have settled on the system where only the community proposed through election, and then the board finalized the approval of these people. So to confirm, because there were some doubts early on, this year, the elections are for 4 people for a term of 2 years. And next year, there will be another 4 people. But the election process is not yet defined. Roughly, that's it for an overview.
Yes, that's quite an overview. Thank you so much for making this clear. I mean, before now, I'm sure most of us didn't know that there were some experts who are playing the background in the Wikimedia movement, per se. And then you were the Wikimedia Foundation Board Chair from October 2006 to July of 2008. Could you please tell us what it was like taking the mantle from Jimmy Wales?
So what happened is, and that's again, I'm going back a little bit in history because the board has changed a lot over the past 17 years. It has, or 18 years, it has been operating. When I joined the board, there were only 3 people at that time, so we jumped to 5. And the 2 first people elected were both women. Again, I insist that women can be elected. At that time, the foundation was basically just a small envelope. It was only a collection of websites. It had a bank account, which was nearly empty. It owned a bunch of URLs, such as wikipedia.org, wikipedia.com as well, and few like these ones. And other than that, that was essentially it. And it owned the servers. We had 3 or 4 servers at that time. So it was, there was no staff, there was no budget, there was no office, there was absolutely nothing. So of course, this has changed quite a lot. What happened at that time is Jimmy Wales was the chairman by default. And I think in his mind, he probably thought he would be the chairman like forever. We didn't really discuss that much, but he was the chairman, and that was obvious. It was going to be for a very long time. And what happened is that during my tenure, during these 4 years, the key elements to keep in mind is that this was the time where we grew up the most, between 2004 to 2008. In 2004, very few people knew about Wikipedia. We didn't have many editors. We didn't have much visibility. We had some media articles from time to time, but not very frequently. And the growth, the main growth of Wikipedia was around 2006, 2007. And the problem is that as a foundation, we really struggled to keep up with this growth. It was very hard for us to follow all the requirements, all the needs that this very fast-growing environment was living. And Jimmy got very much requested, in particular, to talk to the press. So Jimmy was traveling all the time, going to conferences, speaking to the press. He loved that, and he did that very well. The problem is that in the meanwhile, the operation, the activities on the board were not happening anymore. It was not his cup of tea, to say it nicely, and he didn't have the time anymore. So there was a moment where the board had to set up and say, we need to find a solution. And we need to actually move away and, move this away from founder syndrome, whatever, and try to grow and now be aware that we need to expand the board and have a different process. And that's when they decided to appoint me chair. And at that time, our main worry, we had several things to deal with. There was the worry of Jimmy, which of course felt like maybe was stripped of something. but we reassured him that he would be there forever. Like, we love him. That's our Jimbo. And the second thing is that we feared as well the community reaction and the potential funder reaction and the press reaction, thinking what's going to happen if Jimmy is kicked away. So we had to deal with that, and it went fine. And everybody could see that we made it well. And the one thing we decided at that time, and which is still ongoing at the moment, is that we decided that the following chairs would always be community members. And I don't know, and maybe Maria will tell me if they decided to change their mind, but very visibly since then, the only chair people we had were always community members. So that was just a growing process, and we managed very well, I think.
Wow, that's quite a history. I mean, having all these sharing with us about how the Wikimedia Foundation grew over the years. Florence, I think we might just get a session privately for you to download us.
No, that's not. Don't go into that. Don't go into that.
So let's move to the next question we have for you.
Yeah.
And the question is, as one who probably already had a personal life going on before becoming the board chair, what was it like juggling the board chair affairs and other aspects of your life?
That was a challenge, I must say. That was very complicated. When I joined the board, I had 2 kids. I had a full-time job. And so Wikimedia stuff was being done on weekends, was being done during holidays, was being done during whatever time I could find. And this, I guess, will be always the case for every single board member. We will always have to jungle with family and with the work. And I didn't tell my company that I was on the board. So it was on top of that, often they thought I was just taking a day off, like Monday off, just for rest. And actually during the 3 days, I was flying to Tampa, Florida. So I was sleeping 2 nights in the plane and getting at the airport at 9 a.m. in the morning. And at 9:30, I was at my job. So it was complicated. And the other thing that was complicated, and thank God it's certainly changed, is that since we didn't have much budget, even things like nanny costs or stuff like that were not covered. And I think this probably changed. So if we can reassure some mothers on the matter, I'm sure there is some additional support now that is meant for the mom. Then I got my son when I was my 3rd child when I was on the board. So I was with a baby. And that's the moment where I stopped working for a while because it was too complicated. But some people might remember that I went to Wikimedia in Boston with my baby boy. So he attended Wikimedia Boston. That will be a challenge for anyone in any cases, and I'm fairly sure that it's probably a good idea to talk with your, actually better than in my case, but to talk with your company, with the people who hire you to discuss that and to have some time set up, because otherwise it might be complicated. And by the way, we will see afterwards, we normally have 3 candidates from Africa, and we invited the 3 of them, and one of them could not be there, and of course, who is it? The woman, because she couldn't manage. Yeah.
Almost typical, but
the usual story. Yeah.
I think with this said and this answer you're giving us, it would be nice to get a glimpse of Maria's thoughts, or maybe the current realities of juggling the board chair affairs and other aspects of one's life. Maria, could you help us?
Of course. But first, let me say hi, Theslos. Hi, Florence. Thanks for having me here. I will say that the advantage I had when I became the board chair was that I had previously 2 years as vice chair. So in a sense, I had strong onboarding and visibility into what the role would entail, right? Especially with the second year being given more responsibilities, so that the ramp wasn't as high as, a normal board member becoming suddenly chair, right? And that helps a lot. I would say that there's 3 different moments during my tenure as a chair, right? Like the first year, it's quite a thing to become the person that suddenly people go for answers. And when they bring you problems, they're not your run-of-the-mill problems, like they are high-level problems, right? It's fortunately, you gotta have a lot of high-level organization skills. I think this is really, really important. And you have to be able to keep track of a million things. I think it's a requisite just for being a trustee. But if you're the chair who needs to have visibility into most things that are happening, even more so, right? With the second year, in which you are more used, in a sense, like you have a routine down, right? Like you get into the inertia of things. I think it was a very fun year in that sense, in that we tackled really important topics, right? And then there's the third year. That was I call it the unexpected year, last year, right? At the beginning of the year, and then when I talk about a year, I talk from one Wikimania to another Wikimania. I had already indicated I'm not going to continue as a board chair, okay? I will not run in the next elections. Let's prepare for a transition. It was part of the board priorities for the year, all right? And we get to February, and in the board meeting at February 2020, I also tell the board, I need a maternity leave. I'm going to have a baby. It's a great opportunity as well for Natalia to become the acting chair, have more responsibilities. Ezra became an acting vice chair. So you have trustees that are stepping up, that are going to get during this period in which nothing is going to happen until basically the Q4 meeting, the one that's about the annual plan. It's a good moment for people to start getting their hands dirty a little bit with more responsibility. What happens in March 2020? The entire scenario changes, right? Like there's a global pandemic. We have to close the office of the foundation extremely fast and start working from home. It's a very, very difficult moment. The foundation reaches out to the trustees whose terms about to expire and says, look, we don't think we can do community elections now. We don't think if we could even get community candidates that could, everyone is being so affected. People are getting sick. People are dying. People are losing their loved ones. We're thinking about, postponing for a year with the hope that then we might be in a better situation and we can get community participation and we can have, strong, good candidates and a good election process. So we have this situation in which everything is appended. I am taking calls, even though I'm on maternity leave. I still have really burned into my mind having my newborn baby crying while I'm still in a board meeting trying to move things forward and help, right? And this is the unexpected year. I didn't have a plan for this year, so we have to come up with, what are we going to work on this year? What are we going to do as our board priorities for the year? And of course, within this frame of movement strategy that we already have the movement recommendations. They came out in March of last year. So how can we keep moving forward without, halting everything in this context in which it's extremely difficult, right? And so I'm very proud of the board because we were able to keep the trains running in a sense. The staff was wonderful, of course. Personally, I reached the end of the year very, very tired. And I know everyone else as well, in the sense of everything went extremely online, right? Like the amount of free time you had, it just shrunk so much, right? We had community conversations happening every weekend. We need to move forward things like movement strategy, for instance. And it was hard, and we know without any in-person conferences, and this is a movement that has learned to depend on in-person conference in order to move forward topics and reach consensus and make decisions, having to figure out how do we move that online and have, for instance, global conversations. And then we started finding all the challenges, right? Like time difference challenges. How do we make sure that everyone can participate? The language challenges. In a sense, this has been positive because it has forced us to make sure everything has to be available in at least 10 languages, in at least the major languages. And let's see if we can get, people from requests from other languages, and we can make it happen. Childcare, as Florence mentioned before, the conversations about childcare. They were possible in some cases because that's another thing. This is a very international board. People are in different regions, and the spread of the sickness or the availability of vaccines varies a lot. In my case, there was no childcare available. You couldn't it was impossible during lockdown to get someone in your house, right? So I had to change how meetings happened. There was no possibility of having, 2 or 3 day meetings of 5 hours straight for 3 continuous days. If you have a baby or you have someone dependent on you, you just cannot do that. So we started experimenting with, for instance, let's have meetings in non-consecutive days. Let's have meetings that are like an hour and a half long or 2 hours long. Trying to adapt to the situation in ways that would reduce the burden on everyone at a time where, everyone was trying desperately to do their best. It's been a really, really hard year to navigate. Of course, I know everyone understands that, and in their own context has been through that, right? I'm hoping that we're going to get through it all together in the movement as best as possible. As I said, I'm really proud of how the board has handled it. We've been moving forward with movement strategy. We've been moving forward with all the governance reform that came from the governance review that we did in my first year as chair. So in that sense, I'm happy, but I will admit I think we all felt the burnout as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Maria. Really, I couldn't agree less when you said 2020 was quite a year for everybody. Not to talk of somebody who is on a board chair or as a chairperson of a fast-paced organization like Wikipedia. That would be too much. That would be too much for anybody. Good to hear these details. I mean, I could really relate to what you said, and I believe our participants could also find themselves being in such situations, especially during the pandemic. Moving forward, Florence, how is devoting a huge amount of time to the movement for free, in quotes, going to benefit, let's say myself in the end, if I decide to maybe run and maybe get elected? How is it going to benefit me? Not financially, but what do I get out of it? I mean, what benefits can one derive from being on the Wikimedia Foundation board?
Okay. First, before addressing this question, I will answer Anna's ask a question related to the appointment. How did it happen? So it's very simple. It did not happen from the start. We had only election at that time. And I must point out something I suddenly realized when you were asking the question. We are currently talking about diversity in the sense of a real life culture about Africa, we're talking about countries or continent, or this type of real life thing. And back in 2004, when we had the first election, the discussion was already on diversity, but it was not the real life diversity. That was the diversity from the project. Said differently, at that time, the English community was very predominant. We didn't have so many languages. The second one was definitely the German with quite some impact, but most of the other languages were really behind. And one of the fear of the community is that only two, to say it bluntly, either English, British, or maybe Canadian, or maybe Australian or American would be elected, and that will be it. And the fear was not so much misrepresentation from country, it was a fear from misrepresentation per languages. So one of the reasons I put forward my name is that I was from the French community, French-speaking community. And I think there was a strong desire in the next few years to always elect people from different linguistic communities. But at that time, we were never talking about country. So I never realized that there was a switch at some point when we started defining diversity differently than the diversity from back of the first few years. We first only had election. And at some point, the problem is after the second, the third, or fourth board, we always only had very community strong people, and we were always lacking those people to provide oversight from, in particular, financial and legal perspective. And of course, none of us coming from the community had enough strength to be able to do this overseeing job. And again, it's very important to remind that the board is not supposed to do the job. It's supposed to oversee the people doing the job. But if we don't have the expertise to do the overseeing, then it doesn't make any sense. The staff could do whatever, and the board will not be useful in that manner. So this discussion was coming over and over again, and at some point we decided to go to the appointed people. And I remember that there was a lot of complaints from the community members at that time, saying that this was just wrong, but we had to. It was necessary. Otherwise, to go back to your question, what do we get out of the board? It should be point out that board members are not paid for their job. They are only reimbursed of their expenses. This is a topic that was raised several times. So the board members are not paid. They are just reimbursed from costs. What is the main thing we get out of that? Well, let's be honest. It's simply power. We get a powerful mean to orient the project, the movement, in a certain direction that we think is important, and we have the power to prevent it going into the wrong directions that we don't want it to go to. Let me give you an example. Back in 2006, when we started being really visible, of course, we had many propositions from the big company. I don't need to mention names. Big company contacting us because they wanted to buy us or invest in us, and get a sort of just as if we were sort of a baby future big company, and we had to take a lot of time to explain that we didn't want to do that, that we were different, that we didn't want to be a big tech company. We wanted to do something for the entire humanity. And it was tough. I mean, you had to resist, because when you're in a situation where you are in intense situation from a financial perspective, because you cannot have the server running properly. Wikipedia was frequently down just because we didn't have enough money to maintain the servers properly and have enough servers. Then when you're in this situation, you have to make sure that you have a clear mind on what your vision is about what your future is, so that you stick to this and you go to this direction. And one of the things I did when I was chairwoman was to actually establish what we have now, and change over time, of course, but what was the first vision and mission and values of our movement, so as to make sure that board members are aligned with that, and mostly the brand new staff members we hire are also understanding what is important to us and what is negotiable and what is not negotiable. And what do you mostly derive from being board member? Well, you have your hand in this. You can actually lead that in a certain direction, and that's such a satisfaction. All of us can do it as a regular member, but when you're a board member, you can do way more, and that's the big thing. That's the reason why you stick there, even though you're super tired, as Maria was saying with the baby boy. And the baby boy, when you see some blackness around me, it's that the baby boy is a big boy now.
Wow.
And, he's a 15-year-old guy, and he's moving around. He's very unhappy because he wants to play with it. But yeah, that's the big thing. The power. The power, simply the power to move in the right direction.
That's interesting. I mean, knowing that you are in the right room where more or doing more is propelled, it can be quite satisfactory. How about you, Maria? Can you maybe highlight some other benefits that comes with being on the board? Okay.
Of course, I can expand a little bit on what Florence just said. Yes, I think anyone who considers running for the board, it's because they want to change things, right? Being on the board allows you that opportunity of saying, hey, when we're discussing a strategy, this is where we should put the focus on the next year or in the midterm plan, or make things happen, right? Usually the people who run for the board have, very strong feelings about things that need to happen, things that need more attention, or things that need to change. In a sense, I would say most are reformists. I think it's rare someone would run just to maintain the status quo, right? And I say it in the sense of, it's not that people come and they're going to do a revolution, it's that they come and they want to move things forward. And that's great, right? As Florence said, there's no compensation. You get reimbursement when you travel, and that's it. I would highlight the human connections, though. Being on the board allows you to meet a lot of people, right? And in particular, I would say you also get to meet and work very closely with Wikimedians inside the board, and of course with the appointed seats. It's been a privilege to be able to work with some of the people during the 8 years I've been on the board, that they care so much. They wanted to make this movement so much better, right? Just to say one name, for instance, I have this huge admiration and respect for Natalia Timkiv. It's been such a pleasure to work with her so closely. She's been my vice chair, right? And she always brings such a fresh perspective on things. She's a fierce advocate for the community. And she's someone that I would probably, in different circumstances, not have met, Before she was active in the CE community, I was active in the Ibero community. We would have been in nearby orbits, but we probably wouldn't have met, no? And it's, as I said, it's a privilege to have been able to work closely with someone like her. The staff, of course, meeting people and working closely with people like Catherine Marr, Amanda Keaton, Aileen Hershenov, Roman Arbel, Jaime Villagomez. I could say so many names to see how professional they are. How much they care, all the careful thought they put into how do we make this organization and the movement be better every time? How do we make sure we are always in the spirit of the mission, the values, and the vision that apparently Florence helped create? And it's, I swear, it's as low as you have to consider doing an interview just on the history of the Wikimedia Foundation with Florence, because I find these things just so interesting, because I actually had no idea about that.
Session with Florence. I keep saying it. We need a session.
Maybe
yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's something that it's great. I mean, you're not gonna get. I don't think you get recognition in the sense of someone is going to give you an award or something like that. Maybe from time to time you do some media exposure. But that's, yeah, I mean, in my particular case, for instance, I've always had so much trouble with travel because I have a Persian surname, which has meant that, going to the US has always been complicated. But also because I'm a board member, or I was a board member, I couldn't travel to Iran, where I have family, which means I've spent the last decade where I haven't been able to make these connections with part of my family. My sister has been able to go meet them, see them, but that's something I haven't been able to do strictly because I have been a member of the board of trustees, right? So there are some sacrifices that could be involved. I do actually have trouble thinking of benefits. To be perfectly honest, this is work. Being a board member is work, right? And at the end, you give everything you've got to try to move the needle a little bit towards something better than things were better than before you came. And I think that's what board members aspire to, really.
Thank you for the insights. That's really a good rundown, I must confess. And then you were on the board, Maria, for a total of 8 years. I mean, what can you say about your 8 years journey on the board?
Well, it's been a long run, right? I think with the perspective of time, I've seen both the board, the organization, and the movement change so much. I remember back in the day, it wasn't uncommon to be the only woman in the room, right? When I was in my affiliate in Spain, I was the only woman in the board, and it was a pretty big board. And, you know, it's many community meetings and still being the only woman in the room, right? And I've seen that change, right? I've seen how we've mainstreamed concepts such as diversity, or even now more recently, knowledge equity, right? And that comes from having these global conversations. I think some of the things I'm really happy about, for instance, is movement strategy, making the biggest collaborative effort in our movement, trying to get a lot of people to come together and decide, with all the flaws that the process might have had, what is our path forward? Where do we want to be years from now? How do we want to become? How do we want to be as a movement, right? I was a member of a working group, and I insisted that there had to be board members in all the working groups, right? I had the opportunity to work with such dedicated people in the resource allocation group, for instance. It was a joy to have those conversations about, this is where we are now. What things need to change? And let's be as bold as we can be. How can we make sure that by 2030, we're not just the infrastructure of free knowledge in the entire world, but also how do we go to places where people have never heard of us? How can we be of service to them? Can we make sure that the knowledge we have is of the highest quality possible? And these are the kind of questions that they are fun to discuss as a Wikimedian, right? So in that sense, it's been. I'm really happy with movement strategy. Of course, now we have to talk about implementation and so on. But I think that's one of the things that I'm happiest about having us as a movement collectively thinking about our future, right, for the very first time. And not this being something that just comes from an organization or, everyone just going in a different directions. No, we're all trying to converge and pull together forward together. On a different angle, I'm satisfied with the work we've done on board governance. As I said before, one of the first things I did when I became chair was commission the creation of a governance review. And we received the recommendations, and we've been trying since then to implement them. Of course, it's the work it's going to be the work of several years. But we have started seeing the first steps with regards to board evolution, the expansion being one of them. We found that 10 people in a board, it's not a lot of people. There's really no space for redundancy. It means that committees are people by 2 or 3 people. The moment one is down, a lot of work falls on 2 people. And if there's 2 down, then it's just too many single points of failure, right? The hope is that with the expansion, and which means having more community voices in the board as well, we can make sure that board can be more efficient. And at a time where the world has become so much more complex, the organization has become more complex, we have a movement in which we are becoming bigger and bigger every day. We are more interconnected in that sense, right? So, and the work with the committee restructure, the work with the code of conduct, hiring Catherine, how we've changed how the board requests feedback from the community to integrate it in decision making, as opposed to having, a resolution or a statement appearing out of the blue, right? And of course, it's all iterative with mistakes being made, but always trying in this sense of we want to be collaborative, we want to discuss with the community and trying to move the organization in that direction. I think that has been one of the advancements or the progress we have seen in recent times. And I think it's a good direction of, I do believe in the wisdom of the crowds, right? So, of course, we have to talk about how do we make sure that the crowd is as diverse as possible so that we can get the most points of views to make better decision making. But I do believe that that leads to better decision making.
Okay. Thank you so much for the details you just spilled. The next question is, what were the highlights of your tenure as the Wikimedia Foundation Board Chair?
For me, Silas, or for Florence?
That's for you, Maria.
You.
Of course, we'll still get
Okay.
That's for you.
Oh, yeah, of course. Well, I think I went into it a little bit in the previous question, but I would say that, if I had to pick 3 or 4 things, absolutely would be hiring Catherine. She made us evolve exponentially as a movement and as an organization. Movement strategy, which again, I believe made the organization and the movement take a qualitative leap and change from the, everyone is working in their small corners and they're working on small things to let's get everyone together, let's think big, and let's, align all our energies in this direction. And we'll have to, still make decisions about how this will look like, and, how some people will do it and the timeline and so on. Of course, all the details, implementation, as I said, is still to be determined, but at least we have alignment, we have a direction, and we have recommendations, right? And that's already a gigantic win. And the code of conduct. The code of conduct, I think, has been, I wish it had happened sooner in the sense of, I think it would have been groundbreaking 3 or 4 years ago. And right now, I think we're a little bit late compared with the rest of the internet, but it's important. Harassment has always been noted as one of the problems that a lot of people have when contributing to the projects, right? And we've had to have these serious conversations about first acknowledging that it is an issue for a lot of people, and then what are we going to do about it, right? The proposal for the code of conduct had something like, I think it was 75 reviews by a lot of people who came from different projects to gather input, which shows how important this matter was for a huge part of the community. I know that in the next few months, there's going to be this conversation about enforcement. And I hope there's also a lot of participation. But I'm happy that as a movement, we were able to, not just shrug things under the carpet and sort of pretend that, this is not something that happens or that is a problem, but on the contrary, face it head on and try to figure out how we can try to fix this, right?
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Florence, over to you. You've mentioned the mission and vision statement as one of your highlights. I know there could be more. Could you give us other highlights of your tenure as board chair in resume?
I haven't really thought of that. So no, I was busy on the chat actually. I don't know. No, I don't know. We jumped from an organization, as I was saying, with no office, no staff, no rules, no process, no nothing, just nothing, to a situation where we had some staff and some rules and some vision, mission, some draft documents at least to orient us. It was a continuum. I don't think there was really a high moment. It was a continuum and a bunch of things we did, I think, that were useful, necessary to proceed. And I don't think we need to say more than that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so
much. Plus,
the
time is running, and we know we want also to hear the candidates. So.
Yes, please. And I would like to announce that Eliane Dominique has joined us, who happens to be one of the candidates from Africa. And as you know, the call for candidates is still open until 29th June 2021. We currently have 12 candidates for the 4 seats. Three of those candidates, Reda Kerbouche, Eliane Dominique Yao, and Douglas Ian Scott, are from Africa, and we have invited them to join us. Reda Kerbouche is a founding member and manager of Wikimedia of Demystified user group and head of communication at Wikimedia Algeria since 2014. He was in the organizing committee of Wiki Endeavor and Wiki Arabia. He's also a member of Wiki Endeavor steering committee and a former member of the affiliations committee. Eliane Dominique herself is an active contributor from Wikimedia Côte d'Ivoire, a shining star in Wikidata. She has helped a lot of users in her user group to understand how the Wikidata works. She also serves currently as a regional ambassador of Francophone Africa and France for the Art and Feminism group, just like Zita herself. And then we have Douglas Ian Scott, who was president of Wikimedia South Africa from 2015 to 2020. He was the lead organizer of Wikimedia 2018 in Cape Town and co-organizer of the first Wiki Endeavor conference in 2014. Over the years, he has championed the organization of Wiki Loves Monuments in South Africa. He has been an active editor on English Wikipedia and Wikimedia Commons since 2006. Douglas currently is a board member at Wikimedia South Africa. So we move to the questions. We'll go with you first, Eliane. You have just put your name up as a candidate for the first time. What motivated you to put your name forward? Eliane, are you there? Oh, she's gone. Okay, we'll just continue, and then when she comes back, she could reply. The next question is for Reda. Reda, you were a candidate in the last Wikimedia Foundation Board elections. I heard it was a very close call, and it takes courage to announce your candidacy once again for the upcoming board elections. What is your motivation?
First of all, it takes a lot of courage and hesitation until the last minute. This election, for me, it's like the last election. I'm supported by a great number of communities and people, and it is their confidence in me that motivated me for the second time to be here in the board. For me, it's really important to understand that a lot of people or a lot of communities support me to get into the board, because the age of such a large global community requires a responsible person who will put in place mechanisms or will assist or help person who will put these mechanisms on the movement. So this is one of my motivations at this time.
Thank you for that, awesome answer. Eliane, can you hear me? I think Eliane could be having a network problem. So we move to Douglas. Douglas, one could say you took your sweet time before announcing your candidacy. Why is that? And what motivated you to put your name forward?
Thank you. The reason why I took a long time to think about to put my name forward for this position is because this is a very big responsibility to take on, being a board member. It also requires that, so I did have a lot of people encouraging me, a lot of groups encouraging me, much like Reda. But the reason why I hesitated is because, like I said, a lot of encouragement, a lot of responsibility, but also it requires a lot of sacrifice. Florence already sort of mentioned that earlier, as did Maria, that it does require you to give up a lot of your volunteer sort of activities. So, you got to leave the board that you got to leave your chapter positions. You can't engage as easily with members of the foundation for very good reasons related to conflict of interest. And that has an impact on your volunteer activities and all the projects, sort of certainly all the projects I'm involved in, especially trying to promote things like a stronger presence for African editors in the Wikipedia community, copyright advocacy, which is something I'm also very passionate about. That's one of the reasons why I was sort of hesitant. In terms of why I'm running and why I feel so passionate about it, there's essentially three reasons, but they all relate to community. So when people ask me, like, what is Wikipedia? What is the Wikimedia movement? What is the free knowledge movement that we're a part of? For me, it's a community. Things like Wikipedia is sort of the result. Things like the Wikimedia platform, the technology is just the platform that we sort of make that happen. But it's really sort of the strength of the volunteer public benefit spirit of our community and strengthening that. And with the departure of Catherine Ma as CEO, there's going to be a change of leadership, executive leadership within the board. I was a very big fan of Catherine. I was very happy to see her elected. I think she's had a tremendously positive impact on our movement, and I was very sorry to see her move on from the movement. But with the new CEO, we do need to make sure that we get a person who is very aware of the volunteer public benefit spirit of our movement, the free knowledge spirit of our movement. And one of the reasons sort of I put myself forward was to be amongst the crowd of people that can have a peace of mind, encourage a peace of mind that we are selecting the right people, that we're coaching the right person. So that's just the CEO part, right? The other part is a stronger community representation. Now, the outgoing board has done a lot of very good work here, especially since 2015, in ensuring that the community has a strong voice on the board and within the foundation. There's always a concern, however, that the foundation might, especially as it grows, especially as it becomes more bureaucratic, which is a necessity of becoming larger in many ways, that it'll lose this volunteer spirit. It might lose sight of it. And so that's another reason why I sort of really wanted to sort of be on there, to make sure that we always have a very, very strong and increasingly strong role for the community within our movement broadly. And the board is sort of the first place where that can happen. And then I suppose the third reason is that we need a greater representation for countries from emerging countries, people from a more diverse geographical sort of background, in addition to sort of other types of diversity, which is also very important for representation on the board. And a good example of that, and this is, I suppose, really the tipping point for me for really deciding to run this time, was when the foundation asked me and asked the South African chapter for assistance in ensuring that as many of the African language Wikipedias, especially here in South Africa, the South African language Wikipedias will participate in the election process for this board position. We went out and we were trying to sort of convince the linguistic communities, and with one of the largest ones, certainly the largest African language linguistic community on Wikipedia here in South Africa, which is Afrikaans Wikipedia. There are a number of individuals and members of that community who felt a strong sense of alienation and skepticism about even participating in the election. And that really illustrated how there's a need for a stronger connection to African communities, especially African language communities and communities generally in Africa and in emerging countries generally. I suspect it's not just in the Afrikaans community that this feeling is there. There's a much stronger need for a sense of connection with the board. and what's going on in the board, and a much stronger need for dialogue between members of the board and what the board is thinking and the rest of the community broadly. And so that's why I sort of put myself forward as to act as that bridge, as that extension of the community on the board. Sorry, I spoke for quite a long time, but I'm done.
Oh no, please, that was quite an insight, and we could all agree, and the other of us here, that there's need to have representation for emerging countries. Eliane, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you so much. The first question we have for you is you are putting up your name as a candidate for the first time. What motivated you to put up your name?
Okay, firstly, sorry to be late. I was in the conference and I can't join you at the time. So I'm very happy to be candidate, and I'm very happy, firstly, to be member of the Wikimedia family. And my first motivation is that over all the situation I see, over all the overall I see in the movement. The bird group need to be diversified. So at first you want to be the voice of the community that is missing on the board. And secondly, I want to share maybe my experience as a Wikimedia executive member, and I want also to share the experience of the others members who maybe work in the board since many time now. So comment dire ça? So so I have many reasons. The main reason is that I want to represent my community, and I want to be the voice of people who can't maybe share the idea with all the community.
Okay, thank you so much for that response. It's been nice to have a voice on the board. Now to the second question. Reda, over to you. What do you want to personally achieve on the board?
Very good question. Of course, what I want to achieve is a little bit difficult, but not impossible. At first, guarantee equal treatment for all Wikimedia movement without exception. Initiate new activities that aim to reduce and eliminate inequity in the movement at all. It's like I have put my goals on the page candidate. You can read this also there. Other thing, if the movement has admitted, for example, an affiliation anywhere in the world, we must also be responsible of how was their progress. So if we offer a group of Wikimedia affiliation, then we do not support them, or we leave them abandoned, it will guarantee internal problems. For example, there is a lot of issue in the now I will not give an example because we are in lab. If someone wants to know an example, I can talk about it in private, but there is some affiliation with the problems. But if we can adjust something like I don't know, a correct onboarding for this new affiliation, we will see the progress of this affiliation. Another situation is finding a solution to the problem that the foundational part of the certain affiliation recognized by the foundation. If I can participate in this resolving these problems, will be a victory for me. It's my goal, I think, to resolve problems in the affiliation through the board, if I can, of course, be on the board.
Okay, thank you so much for that swift response. Douglas, could you please let us know what you personally want to achieve on the board, if elected, of course?
Thank you. I suppose the most important thing is to achieve a greater sense of comfort and understanding amongst the community and confidence amongst the community in the board and in the movement broadly and the foundation broadly, to act as that go between the rest of the community and the institutional structures that hold up, the institutional structure being the Wikimedia Foundation that put out all the infrastructure that make the movement happen. So essentially that's enhancing the community health broadly on that particular level is, I suppose, my first and foremost wish to achieve. Secondly, on a more specific level, and this relates to something that's been of great interest and a passion of mine for a long time now, is to help emerging communities from emerging countries and the growth of communities in emerging countries. There are two reasons why this is important. One is that I strongly believe that is the future of the future growth of our movement is in emerging countries, and Africa is key for that, as is Asia. Large numbers of people who are sort of coming online, coming onto the internet, are now beginning to sort of join the internet, who are not currently really represented, but a lot of work needs to be done to sort of bring them on board, to create a friendly, welcoming environment for them to sort of join our movement. And I would like to create help create a more welcoming environment for them within our free knowledge movement. The other aspect of that is a sort of more on a functional level, to do with our movement's overall mission, which is the sum of human knowledge freely available to everyone everywhere. And now, if we want to provide the sum of human knowledge, we need to, it's a very, very important priority, fundamentally important priority, include as many people as possible from a diverse range of backgrounds as possible. And that sort of really emphasizes the importance of including people from emerging countries, which currently aren't fully represented within our movement. So that would be the other thing I'd like to achieve, if possible. Very ambitious, but we got to.
I agree, quite ambitious, but nothing is impossible. Eliane, over to you. What would you like to achieve if you're elected to the board?
First, I have a question. Is it possible to explain myself in French and someone to help me to translate?
Oui, c'est possible. Allez-y.
Ok, d'accord. Donc, je crois qu'il fallait me le dire un peu plus tôt. Comme ça, j'allais pouvoir exprimer toutes mes idées pour la première question. Ok, d'accord, super.
Bon. Allez, je vous écoute.
Comment?
On vous écoute, vas-y.
D'accord. Donc, pour moi, c'est important d'intégrer, comme je le disais tout à l'heure, le conseil d'administration. Moi, je ne viens pas dans un esprit de peut-être emmener à changer ce qui existe déjà, c'est-à-dire à changer ce qui est déjà fait par d'autres communautés, je veux dire les autres membres du conseil qui ont travaillé précédemment. Mais l'idée, c'est d'apporter de l'aide, d'apporter une plus-value, pourquoi pas, et dans la communauté, puisque la communauté est diversifiée et on a plusieurs compétences. Chaque personne, selon son domaine de compétences, peut apporter son aide. Donc, pour moi, aujourd'hui, en intégrant le conseil d'administration, ce que moi, je souhaiterais, c'est qu'on puisse emmener la communauté en général à travailler plus à l'intégration des personnes, par exemple, qui ne comprennent pas la langue anglaise. Je veux dire, je prends l'exemple sur ce cas-là parce que on est arrivé, enfin, suite à mes différentes participations aux différentes activités du mouvement, je suis ressortie avec un certain nombre de questionnements parce que je me disais que j'ai des idées à partager, j'ai des choses à dire aux autres par rapport au débat qui est en cours, parce que je peux comprendre tout le contexte de ce qu'on est en train de faire, mais peut-être intervenir en anglais, ce serait un peu difficile, par exemple, donc ça m'empêcherait de partager mes idées. Mais si on avait la possibilité, par exemple, de permettre aux personnes qui s'expriment dans les autres langues de pouvoir avoir une lucarne, je ne sais pas, pourquoi pas, trouver la formation à faire en anglais pour pouvoir les intégrer davantage, ou alors lors des réunions trouver les méthodes pour les interprétations pour pouvoir leur permettre de s'exprimer davantage, ce serait bien. Donc pour moi en fait, c'était le fait qu'on ait inclus l'option capacity building dans la stratégie 2030, c'était vraiment la bienvenue, parce que pour moi il fallait travailler sur cet aspect-là spécifiquement pour pouvoir permettre à toutes les communautés d'être intégrées et d'apporter leurs idées dans le développement de la communauté. Parce que si on ne le fait pas ainsi, on risque d'exclure un certain nombre de personnes qui certainement pourraient envoyer leurs idées pour l'évolution de la communauté. Donc pour moi, en intégrant le conseil d'administration, c'est de permettre à ce que c'est de proposer des idées pour que ces communautés-là puissent être davantage intégrées à travers le brisement des barrières linguistiques. Donc ça, c'est de un. Et deuxièmement, essayer d'apporter également mon expérience en matière de communication à la communauté. C'est vrai, la communauté communique, mais je pense qu'on pourrait améliorer la manière de communiquer de la communauté, communiquer selon les communautés et envoyer les informations selon les langues de compréhension de chaque communauté. Je pense que je peux aider à ce niveau-là à apporter mes idées au conseil, des idées qui pourraient servir aussi pour toute la communauté, en fait. En quelques mots.
Okay, merci. So Eliane was trying to tell us that first she would like to foster community integration at all levels, because currently she feels there is maybe some things that are being lost in translation due to maybe some language barriers and all, and that is totally relatable. So she's trying to build a community that would enhance, or she's trying to make better the community that actually makes use of swift use of various languages, so that whatever that is being communicated will be generally interpreted and understood. And then she hopes to foster a better capacity building for the Wikimedia communities across Africa, and of course the Wikimedians across the world in entirety. So those are the two focuses that she's hoping that she could bring to light if elected on the board. Donc, merci vraiment, Eliane. Thank you so much. We appreciate the input. Thank you, everyone who has contributed. Currently, it's my honor to open the floor to questions. If you have any questions for the guests, please feel free to make it known so we could ask them to address as short and as fast as possible.
Can you hear me? I just want to add some more details to what Cesros translated, and said that Eliane just also said that she would like to create some kind of inclusions of communities that doesn't speak English. because she said that speaking English is like a barrier for many people in the communities, and that will be one of her priority if elected in the board. She also said that she is really happy about the fact that capacity building had been one of the recommendations from the movement strategy, and that is also one of things she will be doing and implementing once in the board. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that additional insight, Mahuton. So we go back to the questions from the audience. If anybody from the audience has questions for our guests, now will be the time to bring them forward so we could ask them on your behalf and you watch them answer. Okay, this one is in France. It says, my first question is for Maria. Do you create a figure? Oh, okay. This is possibly about the current discussion on the Wikimedia mailing list, Maria.
So there's one thing I would like to say first, so that Maria will have to leave soon. So before we ask her any question, I'd like to hear what she has to say to our 3 African candidates, Reda and yeah, please, I'll do that last if we have time, but I'd like to hear what you have first to tell them, in particular in light of the current situation of the board and of Wikimedia Foundation.
Thanks, Florence. I think that my first words to the 3 candidates would be courage. Running in the board elections is exhausting. I know this, I've run 3 times. There's going to be candidate support. Do not hesitate to use it. And I would say use this opportunity to speak your truth. Don't think so much about what people would like to hear. You have the opportunity to put forward the perspective from Africa. And even if it's just with how you tackle the questions to the candidates, you may be able to open this window to the wider community about new perspectives that exist in the movement around old and new problems. I know there is this mentality sometimes that I will only run if I have a real chance to win. There's no guarantees, right? Pace yourselves. It's extenuating. It's the one time that the entire movement feels very entitled to come to you and ping you and ask you questions because they want your perspective, right? So pace yourselves. Make sure you rest as much as you can. And again, I would highlight. Make sure you make yourself available of the candidate support that there's gonna be available. As for the community that you said, Florence, I think it's so important to participate. It's so important to be present at the global conversations, at all the decision-making processes. In fact, this Sunday, there's also going to be a conversation of the movement charter. I believe you are the present and the future of the movement, and we really need you at every level. Bring in your perspective and your experience. Ask questions. You can lead change. Things are not just set in stone. You can do events as well. There's this new movement strategy grants that have come out, and you can make you can avail yourselves of them. I think it's just so important that we have you present at all these global conversations in where we are deciding things together. That if there are obstacles, if there are barriers, we need to know about them, right? And some are coming here like language barrier, right? Some people actually don't know how big of a barrier that can be. It's important to put these things on the table so that they can be tackled.
Okay. Thank you for that, Maria. The first question actually goes like this. Now that you are out now that you've left your position as the board chair, what's next for you? Are we expecting a book, a script, anything?
I have a huge respect for people who write books. No, So one of the things that I've been doing lately is that, my dad got COVID, right? And he's in a hospital and he's on a ventilator. And don't know if or when he's going to wake up, right? And it's been a period of a lot of stress. So one thing that I did, perhaps just because of being a Wikimedian, was I need to understand what's going on. I need knowledge, right? I need knowledge of the process, of what I can expect. And I waded into the projects, right? And I started to do sort of accurate lists of, where the relevant information was. And I shared it with this community of new moms that I had just joined. It's a fantastic community. And unfortunately, people here in Madrid, the sickness has affected everyone, right? People have lost so many loved ones, lost so many friends, or have people in such same conditions. And I say this because the response to something that was very simple. So this is a collection of links in which, this is the process to be expected when someone is sedated, when someone is intubated, if there is an infection in the ICU, if they have to go through a tracheotomy, rehab, and so on, right? Information I was collecting, I was trying to curate it. The response astonished me. When people are very stressed, it makes doing things extremely hard, right? And perhaps because I'm so inside the movement, I didn't realize that these skills we have about gathering information, being able to detect what is a reliable source, what is not, being able to produce good quality information. These are actually skills that, other people don't necessarily have. And we are in a context in which there is so much misinformation. And we know there's been so much misinformation about the pandemic, about the vaccines. I mean, don't get me even started with the vaccines and people saying they're terrible and, they make you into a giant magnet and things like that, right? The ability to have this information accessible, the response was overwhelming, as I said. And even, there were some nurses in the group that took this list. They took it to our patients they had, and it had an effect on this is how we make information accessible. And it made me think that in our movement, we have a sort of reactive understanding of knowledge in that we passively wait for people to access the knowledge, and then they have to wade through the information and to find what they want. What happened if we were proactive about how we understand knowledge? What would happen if we started curating content so that it would be available in a way that is serviceable and useful for people that need specific content, right? I'm thinking in terms of knowledge as a service, speaking within the frame of Wikimedia 2030, in the sense of I see the projects as a library. Let's say they're a library, right? And we hope that people come into the library. And we do events, and we signal people that the library is there. We will help you even write a book if you want and contribute to the knowledge that is in there. But what about the figure of a librarian? A librarian that tells you, look, do you want information about a certain topic? This is where you start, and this is where you continue, and this is how you increase your knowledge to a near expert level, right? I can see the applications, especially for education, right? Understanding knowledge as this active body or this active entity. Now, this has been very recent, right? And I'm hoping to lure in some local affiliates to do this work in my free time. But I think it has a lot of potential in the sense of thinking of knowledge as this living and breathing thing, that there is a situation or there are specific circumstances. Even in education, I know I didn't have an education in which we saw women inventing or as creators of things, right? Imagine if you could actually design some kind of module with Wikimedia content in which this could complement schools or could complement courses, right? As I said, I see such potential with that, and I'm hoping I can get the chance to do a little more work in that sense. It's super recent, of course, but it set my mind thinking in a direction that it's about how we are of better service to the reader, right? Not necessarily, we don't necessarily want to make them into an editor, but how can we provide more service to them, right? And it's, of course, it's served to as a slight distraction in the sense of knowledge also gives you comfort of knowing what to expect and reducing the fear or the uncertainty of the future, right? And especially in this context when there's so much fear around of what's going to happen, right? I have been encouraged by the response to what I thought it was just a small experiment, a small exercise, and I wonder if it could scale, right? Especially in my case, in the case of Spanish Wikipedia.
Okay, thank you, Maria. We know you really have to go, so let's actually appreciate Maria for the advice she gave to the African candidates, the candidates from Africa, and her time in addressing the questions. Thank you so much, Maria. We'll be moving on to the next question. Thank you for your time, really, Maria.
We have one last question, and I don't think it would be fair not to make it published, and that's a good opportunity for Maria to talk about this. So that was the question from Wilfredo.
From Anas.
And no, the Anna's question is for the candidate, so we can move that. But yeah, essentially, that's what do you think about the controversy about your nomination? Yeah. I think we cannot escape that elephant in the room, so you better jump on this. And you have the possibility to talk about that.
Of course, please understand, I cannot see the chat. So,
that's why I'm telling you. It's the summary of the question is, what do you think about the controversy about your nomination? I think that's summarized.
I'm happy to discuss it. So for context, I am a registered consultant in Spain. I have clients, I advise and work with them. And after I left the board, the foundation came with a proposal that I could consult with them. They would be my client, and I could help them into specific areas, right? Movement strategy and board evolution. I started on Monday. It's been an opportunity as well to see how dedicated the staff are. We've been thinking through a lot of things, especially, for instance, just to give you an instance, one shift we've done is there's been now a position of the foundation on the movement charter in order to move things forward, and the foundation has made it public yesterday, and so far the reaction has been pretty good, and we're also discussing the support to board candidates. Now, I know that there's this discussion about, did I create the role for myself? The answer is no. I had already signaled I was intending to step down. I was not part at all of the decision-making surrounding this. My understanding is that it went through the transition committee, the HR committee, the full board, right? I understand there's going to be an entire office hours dedicated to this topic, in which, I encourage people to go and ask the governance questions they deem are necessary. Look, I'm not going to be a problem for the foundation or the movement. If this is going to be a huge issue, we will sit down and discuss. My only desire is to help and support the movement, as I've been doing for the last 15 years and the last 2 years in the board. So from my point of view, this is not a problem. As I said, the foundation is confident that all the checkpoints and all the, governance procedures were followed. I didn't have any visibility into that. I want to stress this out. I was considering a step down because this was an extra year. I did in a very, very difficult context, as I said it before, with a baby, with my dad in a ventilator, and I felt it was my duty to last until the very last meeting, and then left. So I'm not gonna lie. Obviously, it's not comfortable. It's not. The reaction from the staff was wonderful. The reaction for the community, I understand the community can be concerned. It hurts. I'm not gonna lie. But if there's office hours, then by all means, people can ask. I didn't have any visibility on the decision-making process. I am not a staff member. I'm gonna stress that I'm not a staff member. I mean, I think we try to be as transparent that there might be a possibility that the foundation might be asking. And so we included it in my goodbye email, and there was an announcement about this happening. But it was a possibility. I stepped down and didn't know if it would happen or not. It's not uncommon to say, hey, we would love if this would happen one day. And you don't know if it's going to happen or not. By that time, I had stepped down, and I was basically free on the world. But as I said, I have been enjoying the work. I've been working really well with the staff. I will not be a problem, and we will discuss. I would again encourage people to go to the office hours.
Yep. I agree with that. I thank you for your honest answer. And yeah, indeed, there is the office hour plan in a few days, I think. So yeah, let's move. Thank you very much for being there and for all the words and sharing. Maybe Ceslos can thank you officially, and I can follow with my questions there.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much.
You've been quite awesome, showing up and staying till this time. That's very generous of you, despite your restful schedules that you've chosen these days. We are sorry to even encroach into that. But really, thank you for your time. Thank you for the advice you gave our candidates from Africa. And thank you for throwing clarity to the two of the questions that have been asked in this Q&A session. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. So moving on to the next question, Anas said, can our African candidates explain to us how they can ensure that their plans are going to be considered by the board once they join it? Do they have a plan for that? Reda, you can go first to answer.
Yeah, Anas, always Anas ask good questions. So, can our African candidate explain to us how they ensure that their plans
are going to be considered?
Of course, as any candidate, as any member of board, we will discuss all of this. We can't come to the board and say, I have an idea and this idea will be the final decision. Of course, we will try to. I will try to put my ideas on the board. Maybe we will have a process to do all of this, and it's like, you know, it's like in our affiliates. So if, for example, if I am in Algeria in the user group and I want to put something or come with a new idea, I have to consult all our colleagues or all my colleagues to have a good result or good things to do. It's the same thing in the board, but it's more global.
Okay, thank you. That sounds like a plan. How about you, Douglas?
Thank you. So there's essentially three things, tactics, I suppose you can call them, but at least one of them is something that I would expect we'd all do, because it's just a good process for anyone in this position. And the first one is to make sure that the action that you're trying to encourage the board to take is one that you have a mandate from the community to pursue, is one that the community genuinely feels is important. And part of that process is consulting with the community about this action. And the positive spin, the positive side effect of that is that it builds a bedrock of support for your action on the board as well as within the community. So if the board is confident that this is something that's important to the community is passionate about, then it's much harder for the board to say no to, right? The other reason, and now there'll also be things that the community might disagree with and so on. The other thing that's also important is to make sure that you have got allies, and that you cultivate those allies, you grow those allies, and you work with those allies, coordinate with those allies. And this is something sort of I found that's very important, especially in the copyright advocacy stuff that I've done, sort of advocating for the adoption of the reforming of copyright law in South Africa. You really do need to get your allies, and you need to work with them effectively. And the third one is empathy. Empathy with the people that you're talking about. And this is something I've learned from my career as a criminologist, right? We sort of trying to talk to people to do good things and not do bad things. And you've got to be able to empathize with the people you're speaking to so that they can see effectively why what you're suggesting is important and why it is a good thing and why it is important that we all do it, right? So those are my three things, right? Empathy,
Okay.
allies, and mandate or consultation with the community.
That sounds like a good plan too. Eliane, how about you? La question c'est comment est-ce que vous allez faire pour être sûr que votre plan sont implémentés? I think Eliane is having a network problem. Eliane, can you hear me? It's a network problem, guys. We might have to skip her on this.
So the only thing is that the next question is actually directed to her as well. This is, I think, so yeah. But I think
Ok, d'accord. Je pense que nous sommes dans une communauté qui parle d'inclusion et si on veut vraiment pratiquer l'inclusion, il y va de soi qu'on prenne en compte les idées, les contributions et l'apport des autres. Donc, si on a, par exemple, l'idée principale que moi j'avais en ce qui concerne le renforcement. Ok, vous m'entendez maintenant?
Oui, on vous attend.
Vous m'entendez maintenant?
Continue. Oui, continue.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Oh. Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
She was actually on, but a bit of what she said, she was emphasizing that the Wikimedia Foundation actually values what they say about inclusion, that they surely would listen to how she's going to pass across her idea, because she will be doing some consultation locally and all. So that was where she was before she froze and then timed out. But she emphasized mostly that she would try to pass her idea through inclusion, the idea of inclusion. Now that she's not here, how do we do about the question that was addressed to her, Florence? And she's not back. Florence, I can't hear you. Your mic is mute.
Okay, I love it when I'm speaking in the void. Let me repeat that. So there were no, it's always a great time. Okay, so there were no more questions except that Natasha wanted to ask a question related to how should we tackling the gender gap and the harassment problem. So I think those questions are actually interesting to ask Reda and you. But
Douglas.
that would be the last question because we're running out of time. So please try to make it quick and then we can wrap up. Harassment, gender gap, do you have any idea how to deal with that? Or is there something specific you want to get involved in?
She just came back up. Okay. Okay, continue, Reda. Just briefly, please.
Briefly. So I think that this case is almost implemented in our movement, but I think we have to react by if we have some harassment, or we have to react directly in the at the moment when we see this kind of things, because it's really important to not have this kind of person or of harassment in the movement. It will stop all the volunteers, even the male or female. It is not very safe to work in this kind of weather. I am purely against this kind of situations. So it's very important, but we have to work on it.
What do you have to say? Douglas.
So I agree with Reda. It's very important to have a zero tolerance approach to this issue of being unfriendly, creating sort of a poisoning environment. The friendly space policy of the Wikimedia Foundation is a very good and positive step forward in achieving this, right? And we must be serious about applying that. But that's not I don't think that's enough for representation alone, right? We also need to do more to encourage greater diversity within our movement. I'm not a very good spokesman. Being a white man and our community being so dominated by white men, I'm not a particularly good spokesperson for that. But it is very important. If we want to provide the sum of human knowledge, we need as diverse a group of people as possible within our community. And we need to create as friendly and welcoming an atmosphere for this diverse range of people to join our community, as friendly as possible and encouraging as possible. That I think is going to create, that I think is going to require a lot more work, a lot more introspection, a lot more consultation with the broader community, but also with the groups of people who we want to sort of encourage participating in our movement broadly, to encourage this diversity and create the welcoming environment.
Okay, thank you so much. That's quite an insight. Moving on to this episode news update. On this episode's news update, I have with me Candy Kukliwe on the announcements. Please be aware you can view all the news and access links in the newsroom section of the WikiAfrica Hour meta page.
Yes,
the first news.
So
okay.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Candy.
Yes, I was about to start reading my news. Thank you so much, Cecily.
So what we have first is the Board of Trustees call for candidates is ongoing till June 29th. And if you'd like to apply, you'll have the link down there. It's on the banner. And next up, you could go ahead, Cecilas.
And we remind everyone that the Wikimedia conference will take place online this year from 13th to 17th August. It's possible to ask for a scholarship to cover participation costs. The Wikimedia Scholarship Program is open until 30th July 2021. This year, the scholarships will only be issued to affiliate organizations who would then distribute to their respective community members. You can read more on our meta page, the newsroom section.
The Wiki Indaba Steering Committee, in conjunction with Wikimedia Community User Group Uganda, has announced that the next Wiki Indaba conference will be hosted virtually from the 5th to the 7th of November 2021. The team would like to understand people's preferences for this virtual edition. So please kindly fill in the survey. So as you go on the link here for our news, you'll see it on the banner down there, and then you could get the link there. Yeah.
And next, the Art and Feminism call for artists to create an original open license work which helps to visualize hashtag Art and Feminism is open. Up to 2 selected applicants will receive a $2,000 American dollars artist fee each for their work. This is to celebrate the Global South, limiting applicants to artists located in regions where the creators of the call reside. That's African countries. There's Brazil, India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. Deadline is 16th August. You can learn more via the link artandfeminism.org/call to action. You can also see it on the news section in our WikiAfrica Hour page. Candy?
And then Community Resources is about to start implementing new grant funding strategy of Wikimedia Foundation. The Community Resources team is inviting the Middle East and Africa Wikimedians to come and learn more about implementing the new funding programs through office hours scheduled for the 30th of June and the 1st of July. Details are on our WikiAfrica news page. Yes.
And Wikimedia Movement Strategic Global Conversations on Movement Charter we hold on Sunday, 27th of June 2021. If you wish to attend, you need to register through a form. Please check out the form on our news page. The link is there. Registration closes on Saturday, the 26th of June. Candy?
This year, a total of 45 communities will be organizing the Wikipedia Wanting Pictures campaign from about 40 countries. The campaign starts from the 1st of July and closes on the 31st of August. To learn more about this, definitely still visit our newsroom page. You'll find it there, our Wiki in Africa newsroom.
And lastly, the Wikimedia 2021 pre-conference is going to be held in Tanzania. It's scheduled for a Saturday and a Sunday, either 3rd week of July or 1st week of August 2021. The meta page will be up in a few days where you can find more info. You can keep checking the Wikimedia 2021 meta page for info or contact Anthony Ntavangu via his email, which will be put on our newsroom section if you're interested in attending. Anthony is your guy to contact. Again, let me emphasize you can view all the news in the newsroom section of the WikiAfrica Hour meta page. Thank you, everyone. It's been an eventful episode. I believe every attendee and participant now has a better understanding about the Wikimedia Board, thanks to input from Florence, her history class on Wikimedia Foundation, and then Maria, and the other incredible guests who shared their knowledge with us. On behalf of the Wiki in Africa team, we thank everyone for showing up. We thank Andrew Lee and his Wikipedia Weekly team for the StreamYard platform. They've been awesome, guys, having us set up on this platform for the episode so far. We thank you, Maria, once again, Florence, Dominique, Eliane, and Reda, and Douglas for honoring our invitation. We thank you, Mahuton, Zita and Bachounda from the facilitation team for making time to be here to throw light on things. Kendi and I, Ceslo Sobunaya, wish you a happy weekend. See you next time. Bye.
This episode of WikiAfrica Hour was hosted by Ceslas Obanaya. Let us know what topics you want to discuss and join us next month on the same channels. Subscribe to the Wiki in Africa YouTube channel.
Oof.